Anyway, all right. Okay. Friday, December 7th, 1979. A date which will live certainly in my memory. I was in high school. I was in high school. I was in my geometry class, but before lunch, and I suddenly get you know notice I have to go to the front office for some reason. It's the usual thing of the way I was kind of kid I was. What did I do? What's up this time? And so my dad was there. So I get up there and he ushers me out and I wonder what's going on. And it's like we're going to see Star Trek Motion Picture. Now, yeah, it is coming. It was coming out. I know I've been following the stuff in Starlog, following the progress of the film, and then going back and forth between TV movie and low budget film, TV movie, small series, the whole Phase 2 nonsense. And I thought we were going to see it eventually, but I didn't expect my dad to take me out of school to go see it. So basically, it is a memory I cherish. Okay, but movie came out, and then December 7th, they were locked into that date. And sort of why they had it. Paramount apparently they had done a thing where it's like they had guaranteed that it would come out on that date and be within a certain time limit of how long it would be. And if they didn't deliver, if they couldn't delay it, if they did, they'd be sued out the ass. So they had to. So even though all the production delays in making that film have been well documented, that's why I'm not going into much of it now. But it's like, again, they started filming, they didn't have a third act, and the debacle with Robert Abel and Associates, effects. I think pretty much as far as industry wise, last minute bringing in Doug Trumbull. And he did, it's like, we can't do it all. You can get John Dykstra. Say, yeah, we're double teaming. They literally worked around the clock doing effect shot. And they were printing these things as fast as humanly possible. There's a shot of the soundstage at MGM they rented just to have these things in film cans. Because back in the day, it was still regular, real film. And it would show up in a great big, gigantic, octagonal can. About yay thick and yay big, which is all basically 4 reels or how many reels it was for the movie. And as soon as the reel was done, it would drop it in the can. As soon as the can was full, it'd be rushed to a waiting airplane to fly it out. This is the 70s. This is kind of the old. Normally, it's not quite this hectic. The copy that Robert Weiss took to the premiere in Washington D.C. was still wet. It had just come out of the printer again, and he carried it under his arm to Washington, D.C. And this was a rough cut. The whole thing about the theatrical version. No, this was a rough cut. It was the only movie that Bob Weiss was not able to do a test screening for first, and that irritated him for years. That's why he really didn't do any interviews. It just bugged him. He didn't want to talk about it because it was a big sore spot in his career. And this is the guy who was the editor on Citizen Kane. The director of the Sound of Music and West Side Story, The Andromeda Strain, and Day the Earth Stood Still. This was and part of the thing is his contract guaranteed final cut. That's another thing that bugged the hell because he was not given final cut till a long time later. Get to that eventually. In fact, I think I'll cover the DVD stuff toward the end of this because it kind of branches a little bit. So basically, what we had when it came out, it won it did boffo box office, as I say. It was one of Paramount's top money makers for the year. So it's like it didn't fail. It did very well. It didn't do Star Wars money, but it did pretty good. It did turn a profit, even when they tacked on all the costs for Phase 2. It did turn a profit. But there was a thing. But But why so? Can we go back and fix it now? No, it's already out there. That's the movie. It's going out. It's okay, fine. And so I describe it as such began the longest test screening in motion picture history. because it didn't get close to the final cut really until just a couple of years, about a year or so ago with the Blu-ray. But we got a proof of concept, let's say. It's an approximation of the final cut with the DVD release in about 2002. But again, that's down the road. So, movie comes out. Big box office. But okay, so there is money to be made, Paramount thinks. Now if we can just make these things cheaper, then we got something. And now there was already the beginnings of the franchise was there. You had the original series, you had the animateds, which granted it's only 22 episodes, but it's okay. There's viability beyond that, which is what started on the thing of how do we exploit this and get more of it. And of course, there was always the merchandising. Even some going back to the original series, there was always the merchandising. It's kind of hit or miss. Because Star Trek was not the easiest show to merchandise. Because it wasn't really a big shoot 'em up type thing. So and Roddenberry always was a little gun shy as far as marketing goes. That's also why a lot of the marketing stuff he didn't see until after he died. But he didn't want to have kids running around shooting phasers at each other. So that's why when you do have some Star Trek gun, it's stuff that was already out there, and a company like Remco that would just slap a Star Trek name on it. Like this little tracer disc thing, yeah, there was that pre-existed Star Trek and other things too, some kind of space toy thing, and there's perhaps Star Trek on the side. Roddenberry never quite had an idea how to market it, even when some decent ideas. So Lincoln Enterprises would be selling scripts and slides and film, and copies of conceptual drawings, but it's like, where's the phasers? But go along. All right. So one point, okay, they're looking to make a Star Trek 2 because hey, this made a bunch of money. So they start fronting around for who's going to make the next one because it sure as hell ain't going to be Roddenberry. They were blaming him for the overruns and the delays and everything else, and some of the blame was legitimate, but a lot of it, frankly, was at the hands of the studio for jerking everyone around for damn long. Is it a movie? Is it a TV show? Is it a movie? Is it a big movie? A little movie? What? So, but of course, it's a studio. They're not going to take responsibility. They don't have to. They can shovel it on Roddenberry with a kind of a love-hate relationship anyway. Yeah. So back into the world of Gene Roddenberry comes Harve Bennett. And I say back because back when Roddenberry was, Star Trek hadn't quite sold yet. Or if they did, there was but he was, shooting a lot of pilots. He had a deal with the studio, with Desilu, was to shoot pilots. And hopefully one of them would take. One of them was a Western that did actually sell, but then the deal fell through and they never went through with it. Something called The Long Hunt of April Savage. He liked April as a name. Going to star Robert Lansing. It was a Western. And I think it had sold to ABC. Which is why Harve Bennett, who was working for ABC at the time, was there to find out what's going on. Well, Roddenberry didn't particularly care for this, and he had him thrown off the set. So, fast forward about 15 years or so, because this was this was mid-60s, about 64, 65 or so, and now we're up to 82, 81, 82. So about 15 years. And Harve Bennett, who now has more of a record of producing stuff, mostly television, is brought in to discuss the idea of doing, heading up the next Star Trek movie. Because they're figuring, we got to keep Roddenberry around in some capacity, but sure as hell ain't going to be in charge of anything. And they're asking, okay, you've got experience in doing this type of thing with, and they had already said, we're going to put it to the TV division. They know how to make stuff fast and cheap. Which, of course, also would fit in with Harve Bennett's, because his experience was in television. And they're asking, how would you do this? And one executive just said, make it, another movie. It's like, can you make it for less than $44 million? To which Bennett said, hey, for that much money, I can make you 10 movies. Yeah. Which was music to their ears. So they, signed him on there. You're now the executive producer of this thing. he described it as being airdropped behind enemy lines, not knowing a word of German. But he's been selected, so he parachutes in and he's going through his German phrase book on the way down. That's what it felt like to him. But he got in there. He didn't know much about Star Trek because then at the time the show's being produced, he's working on other stuff. He's doing other series. He's working on networks. They don't have time to watch other stuff. If it's not their job to watch other shows, they're not watching other shows. They're working on their own. You're on a set. The outside world does not exist. Wars could happen. You have no clue what's going on because you're busy working. You're doing. Then they don't bring in stuff. You're lucky if you see the sunlight. Usually that only happens if you're shooting on location. You're on a soundstage. 7, 8, 12 hours. You get in there like 4 a.m. You're leaving. Well after dark. So by the time you get home, maybe you catch the 11 o'clock news if you're in LA. But most likely you're going to bed early because you're going to get back up at 4 a.m. and you got the 10 pages of dialogue or whatever. And so no, would not be a big surprise that Bennett did not see anything of Star Trek because he was busy at the time. But he screened all 79 episodes as part. Okay, show me what we got here. Well, I don't know if they did anything with the animated. It's probably not. Just the live action. And Space Seed leapt out at him. Okay, now there's an interesting. What would happen when we go back? Well, let's go back. Let's find out what happened. And started building from there. And then for a director, they're not going to get another Robert Weiss. He sure as hell didn't want to come back after the aggravation. No, because one of his conditions was, no, let me finish the first one first before we start going another one. So we got Nicholas Meyer, who at this point had done one movie. It was that TV movie, the day after, about nuclear holocaust. But he had written a Sherlock Holmes story, The 7% Solution. Huge Holmes fan. Curtis Armstrong talking about auditioning for him, and the fact that he had Baker Street Irregular on his resume, because he's that got in front of Meyer for some job, and Meyer got up, came around the table, put his arm around, and said, "You people do not know what those 3 letters BBI, what the BS mean. It was like an instant bonding moment that he was a fellow Sherlock Holmes fan." But it's like a lot of stuff. He's trying to sneak in Sherlock Holmes stuff. But from that perspective, I think that Meyer would have an appreciation of Star Trek in the sense that because Star Trek fandom and Sherlock Holmes fandom they're parallel. It's just in the sense of big fandoms. But a lot of the stuff that Sherlock Holmes did, and what Conan Doyle did with Holmes, was followed with Star Trek. The idea of a canon, an established official canon of what stories count, because Holmes also a lot of fan fiction, a lot of crazy fans. Because originally, he killed off Holmes in the stories. He was tired of writing the stuff, and he, the whole thing about Holmes and Moriarty plunging out in the Reichenbach Falls. And the fans didn't like it, and he was kind of forced to bring him back in some capacity, so he can keep the stories going. And Star Trek has been kind of similarly, slightly fan, not necessarily driven, but at least influenced. And the fact that you got to keep the fans happy. And Meyer also screen. Maybe Meyer also had to screen the thing because he wasn't familiar with it. When I think he described he was backyard barbecuing, and his wife said, they want you to do the next Star Trek movie. And his response is that the one with the guy with the ears, because he also wasn't that familiar with it. We like to think of Star Trek as this all-pervasive international culture phenomenon, and Yeah, there are people who have never seen a single frame. Okay, especially back in the late '70s, early '80s. It was big, but again, it was still a niche. Not everyone was a fan. Not everyone was dove into it. But Meyer dove in, and he also, again, independently, he wasn't aware that Roddenberry was also a thing of Horatio Hornblower, but that's the attitude that Nick Meyer came in. He said this sort of a Horatio Hornblower in space thing, and that he would layer on. He said he'd layer it on the naval jargon and stuff with a trowel. I think he overdid it in spots, but he wanted these scenes, with the torpedo thing, the equivalent of them rolling out the guns and getting that kind of action there. And they produced more of an action oriented type thing. They had an interesting thing when they're getting Ricardo Montalban, because at this point Montalban is having a happy, very successful career playing Mr. Rourke on Fantasy Island. And he always liked his time on Star Trek, and he'd worked with Roddenberry before. Roddenberry's first, science fiction script, The Secret Defense of 117, starred Ricardo Montalban. And Montalban also showed up on The Lieutenant as a Marine who had bad PTSD suffering. It was one of the story about that sort of thing. So he'd always done, Roddenberry had done pretty good with Montalban, because Khan was a very big role. It's a very big character. But Montalban wasn't sure he could get that mindset back, and thankfully they included a copy of a video cassette copy of Space Seed, because when Montalban ran through the lines first time, I get to record himself. He said, "Oh my God, I sound like Mr. Rourke." And it's like, but he had re-watch the episode to reclaim that mindset of who is this guy that was once ruler of a quarter of of Earth in that way, and also add the point of take that guy, and now after 15 years on a planet that has suddenly turned to a desert wasteland because something blew up they didn't count on, and his wife is killed, and he's blaming Kirk, and just sort of take that already arrogant megalomaniacal thing, just twist it a little bit. And that's how he got Khan in the movie. And populate it with pretty people, Whether or not Judson Scott was playing, because he played Joaquin. There was a Joaquin in Space Seed. There was a big dark-haired guy that, on Uhura. Same guy or named after him, who knows? Could be, that's for all we know, these genetically enhanced people also, mature faster, so he's going to be like maybe 12, just grew up. But who knows? But they had, they put it together and had to be. I'm still ambivalent about the uniforms, because that's again with Meyer going nuts with the naval stuff and getting the big thing. Like Roddenberry said, it looked like a student Prince, recital. So I think they should let's tone this down a bit, because it's not consistent with the other uniforms. So I try and keep some kind of through line, but of course that didn't happen. So Wrath of Khan comes up, and it's also part of it. Spock's death. There wasn't so much that wasn't the condition of Nimoy returning, but it was an enticement to make him a little more excited about it. And so, and they saw, whoever the writer was, Jack Sowers, I think it was, and he, talking to Nimoy, and said, "How'd you like to do a terrific death scene?" It's like, "Oh, really?" But it was never a condition of him doing the movie, and he, he always liked the character of Spock. It's always been a, great character to dig your teeth into and do some stuff. But it did hinder his career somewhat. He kept working. He would get, got a stage stuff. It wasn't like the rest of the cast where they're stuck doing conventions all the damn time because nobody will hire them. And there really was the case in a lot of games. These guys really couldn't get work for the longest time. All they could really do really was conventions. D. Kelly, I think for the most part, had largely retired, but he was able to do conventions. And he said in the Tomorrow Show he was getting a little tired of doing this stuff. He was getting a little old. But the ones that this was their income for a while, doing conventions. So again, part of the thing with why they stopped doing the movies after a while was the cast was getting expensive. They were getting theirs back. The studio had been making all kinds of money off of their asses since the show ended, and the residual payments ran out sometime in the early 70s. Because the contract at the time was they would get repaid, they'd get a check up until the 5th time an episode was rerun. And again, as many times as those shows got rerun, it's like those ran out very quickly. So it's like they, like Jimmy Doohan said, they, in it was like 78, they hadn't seen a check for like 8 years. So within a year or so of the show wrapping up, it's like the residuals were gone because the stations gobbled it up and those were gone. So when they to sign everyone back up, they had to pay them, and they got paid quite nicely. I'm not sure where I was going with that, but but 2 came out, did great. Didn't make as much as the motion picture, but because it cost a hell of a lot less, because they already had the sets up, they weren't paying off a TV series that never happened. It was a lot more profitable than the first one, and it was off to the races. And like death, Spock's death. They're going along, and Roddenberry, not happy, he leaks the script. And as expected, as planned, fandom went nuts. There was a full-page ad in Variety taken up by some fans, saying that if they go through with killing off Spock, they will lose such an amount of money. The fans will go nuts to it. And this kind of spooked them a little bit, but that's where a lot of the simulator scene in the beginning of the movie, where everyone is killed around them, and Savik's left by herself. So they figure, okay, this is a good fake out, because you see Spock go down. Oh, that's what they're talking about. All right, it was dumb. So we all take our thing, we sit back and relax and enjoy the rest of the movie until we get to the point where we need warp speed and we're all dead. Spock get up into the turbo lift. Like, oh crap! Now it's happening. Now it's going to happen for real. It's like, holy crap. And so we get that last scene, in the thing, and then Spock actually dies. Originally, torpedo gets fired off in them, and they go off. And the initial test screenings, this time they had test screenings. And people, the fan, the audience reaction was good, but people were leaving that film like it was a funeral. There was no hope for it. It's like Spock is dead. Like there's no enthusiasm. They didn't want to go see this again. And Harv Bennett said that we need to do something here, or this franchise dies with this film. We got to give these guys some hope to make them come back, to see this thing more than once, but also to come see the next one. So behind Nick Meyer's back, which it still irritates him that they did it, because he felt it was fine the way it was. They filmed the scene with Spock's photon tube amongst the greenery to at least give a hope. Hey, might not be done yet. It's soft landed. He may not be dead yet. And of course the log entry: if Genesis is life from lifelessness, I must come back here. But leading up to that, they also, while they're getting ready to film the scene, Spock, basically goes into hotwire the warp drive. And he had to have worked this out with the director, with Meyer beforehand. It's like, I'm going to do this. And then told D. Kelly, it's like, look, before I go in, I'm going to lay this mind meld on you and say something like remember or whatever. And just go with it. And D. Kelly looks like, you're coming back, aren't you, you son of a bitch? So they planted this. We'll figure out what it means later. But this is something. So it was not a thing. It's like, no, it wasn't. I mean, it's known that we're gonna kill off Spock on this, and you have a great little death scene. Everyone will cry, and we'll have a good scene. But again, they already figured, they already figured by that point, we're gonna bring him back at some point. But again, the test screenings are going, and it's like there's no indication they're going, because they look like when they shoot it off, probably no. It's like they shot him off, and it's like that would have burned up in the atmosphere. So like, even if they're, it's like, how are you going to bring it back? It just burned. So yeah, people leaving like it was dead. It was final. And the way it was going, it's like this is going to be the end of their franchise if we don't do something with this. So they had to go and shoot this bit. And with that, it's like, okay, there's a chance, and people go, and we all went out to see it over and over again. And again, following, they're going to bring it back. And then in the cartoons in Starlog about, there's a Phil Folio thing about, oh, it's so painful. The poignancy with that, and another guy saying, "You know they're bringing him back. What the hell's wrong with him?" And they show a scene of Nimoy in the office flipping through a script for Star Trek 3. It's like, I particularly like this part where I rise on the third day. So, go on. Start in working on Star Trek 3. A little bit of drama when, and again, at this point, Nimoy wants to drop thing. I want to direct. He's been wanting to direct for a while. He'd done some theater, done some TV, but it's like, I want to direct one of these things. And they had a sort of tentative agreement, but the agent's trying to get the studio to, we need to get going here. We're wasting time. And finally, Nimoy calls up Michael Eisner and said, "Why aren't you? What's hold up here? We need to get going." And I can't let you direct this movie. You hate Spock. It was in your contract. You had to kill Spock. And it's like, I can't let you anywhere near this thing I was directing. And Nimoy said, "Mike, my contract is in a file cabinet in the building you're in right now. You can go check it. It was never in my contract that Spock had to die." Okay. I was like, and he's like, okay, I believe. I'll take your word for it. Okay, fine. We'll get going. And they got the deal going. They started working. And then we got, Search for Spock. And again, the big twist on that one. The trick in when you're bringing back a character from the dead type of thing, you can't just bring him back. To work dramatically, there's got to be a price to be paid. Something's got to be sacrificed in exchange. It's like nobody gets out of jail, gets out of the afterlife for free. And in the case of Star Trek 3, the cost of bringing back Spock was essentially David and the Enterprise. That's why it works as it is. It wasn't just, oh, Spock, you're fine. Here, dust you off here. No, it's like there had to be a price to be paid. You got to pay the piper. But that was the big twist on there was the destruction of the Enterprise. And they were, got to make sure they kept that thing guardedly secret. Of course, I don't know if Roddenberry leaked it or tried to, but if he did, I don't think anybody believed him. But the big thing was when those trailers came out. Ad people are very strange. They don't really understand when you want to keep a big twist a surprise. They're putting a trailer. We have the most exciting the exciting parts of the film that entice people in, and they show the Enterprise blowing up with the announcers and witness the final voyage of the Starship Enterprise. Nimoy was ready to string them up by their own intestines. You just blew our big surprise in the movie. I was like, well, yeah, it's exciting, but no, didn't want that to get out, you idiots. And, it's, and of course, the fans go nuts. Because even Nimoy didn't quite understand the reaction, though, because, it's a ship. It's like, no. In the words of Captain Kirk, she is a beautiful lady and we love her. The Enterprise really was considered a 10th character. Of that, along with the rest of the crew, the Enterprise herself was considered a lead character. In fact, back in the day, it's like in the book Letters to Star Trek, an example, some kid wrote in and wanted an autographed picture of the Enterprise, which caught him. And usually, it's like a picture of Captain Kirk or Bill Shatner, but they want an autographed picture of the Enterprise. It's like, okay, and Doug, so yeah, it's in there, and it's the old picture of the 3-footer against the sky background, and I recognize the handwriting as Beezer Trimble's handwriting. It says "Best wishes, USS Enterprise." So, okay, yeah. So it kind of took everyone in back that they knew there'd be a reaction. I don't think they expected it to be that big a reaction. Okay. Thankfully, it's like there was something because there's a letter of Starlog around the time the movie came out. And pointed out, look, people, there weren't 2 bolts left of that original ship when she went up. Okay, so calm your jets a little bit. It wasn't quite the original ship. Okay, I mean, and they're going to debate. Then there are debates how much was original and how much was refit. And I think really, let's pause over here. Here's the original ship. Here's the refit. I think, given the modular nature of these ships, I think everything, the neck on down, this was replaced. Because just the secondary hull and the nacelles all just plug-in units. Something goes weird, swap one out. So the only original frame and component would be the saucer. And just build up on that, expand it a bit. And that kind of modifies a bit of, the original ship was, well, not really. It was, the original saucer blew up and it took the refit that came with it. But, that was it as far as the original go. But you had, but the idea was like, we just need to get another ship now. It's like, well, it's not just another ship. But yeah, you got your crew back. Spock is alive at the end. Now he's got to, get his marbles back in place. And then, all right, for 4, Nimoy gets a second turn at this, and he had it. He didn't do much act. He wasn't much in front of the camera much for 3. He, this was like the very end when he showed everything else. He's behind the camera directing his friends. So 4 was a little more challenging because now he's in front of the camera a lot as Spock. And you can tell the headband, that was so he wouldn't have to put on the ears that day. I think if you look for it, there's no points under that wrap. But that was when they wanted to, okay, let's get back to doing what the kind of story Star Trek used to do about things. I mean, 3 was the first one in a while that really felt like Star Trek because of the nature of the thing and the way everyone acted. And Nimoy did have a good feel for how you make it a Star Trek story and make everyone act right. But 4 is like, okay, what's the big issue of the day here? It's like, Harv Bennett originally was wanting to make a snail darter as the species that got to go back and save. The idea of the world being dependent on these itty bitty little fish. Like, well, there's not much suspense though. If all they got to do is find a river where there's some snail darts, scoop them up, and just get a super big gulp cup from 7-Eleven. Get a big old thing. You probably got like a couple hundred in there by his. Okay, done. We're out of here. There's no suspense there. And also at the time, this was mid 80s. Because let's see, I'm 84 or so. Because I saw 3 before I left for England. I think, yeah. Or was it? No, it No, 4. I was in England. It was in England when I saw 4, so it was like 85, 86. And whaling was still a big deal. Still a discouraged. And let's go ahead and do one where this save the whales. And as a result, actually, they did. They pretty much brought large scale industrial whaling down a lot. It still happens, but not nearly the extent it was going on at the time. And as a result, a lot of species are rebounding. The blue whale is no longer gone. They're rebounding too. Now back to the same thing. So it did have an effect. So 4 comes out, and it is the biggest. It made over 100 million. It's like, okay, great. And the lesson they should have learned from it is because there was no big bad villain. There was no equivalent to Khan. It was a Yule log with a soccer ball hanging from a beam on there, wanting to talk to whales. There was no main villain. And it was the most successful of all of the original cast films. You adjust for inflation, it was the most other than the first one. So they don't need a big villain, but they keep going back to Khan as an example. It's like, no, you're missing it. But 4 hits big. Then we get to 5. Now, at the time they do 4, the grumblings for, when are we coming back to television? When are we going to get a new TV series? That's starting fitting a pitch. And Paramount is okay, I think we've got a thing going with the movie. Maybe it's time to do a TV series. And that's when we start hearing, the first inklings of Star Trek Star Trek The Next Generation. Now, I'll cover more of that. That's covered more in the next video, which actually I already did, and it's still up, so you can watch that one. But 5 is like, Shatner in his contract that whatever Nimoy gets, so does Shatner. So Nimoy's gotten a couple of movies. Hey, my turn. Because one thing, Shatner was supposed to direct the final episode of the original series third season. But the network dropped the option on the final 2 episodes they were going to do. So he never got his chance. So he'd been waiting in the wings for quite a while. And again, he had directed some theater. And by this time, he'd done some TV. I think T.J. Hooker was still there. He'd done a few episodes of that. And he wanted his turn to do a Star Trek movie. And he wanted to do Enterprise Finds God. Which was not really right move. It's like... I discussed in the last one. It's like... The better idea would have been if they'd gone with the Fountain of Youth. Okay? Because, Star Trek has done that before. Or did it? No, I discussed this during the live stream. But... Because the thing is, like Harv Bennett tried to look, what's the TV guide blurb going to say? Star Trek 5. Tonight the Enterprise goes to find God. The audience is going to have a couple of reactions here. 1, it ain't going to happen. There's going to be something else. Or 2, they're going to find God and it's going to be downright blasphemous. It'll be stupid and they're not going to buy it. So either way, you're setting yourself up for a very massive disappointment. But Shatner would, think, it's like, in Free Enterprise. Like, I know it's a crazy idea. One-man show, Julius Caesar, me doing all the parts of the thing, but I think I can do it. That kind of, hey, we can make this happen. I know we can make it. And it's like, no, because between just the slightly insane idea and the studio, because Star Trek 4 had a lot of comedic bits in it. It was fun. So when Shatner has the idea of the Enterprise going to meet God, and the studio response is, yeah, can you make it funny? I was like, okay. Yeah, fine, because he wants a gig. He'll tell him whatever he wants to. It's like the old thing of, can you ride a horse? Oh, yeah, I can ride a horse. And that night you're looking up, horse riding. He's like, learn how to ride a horse by tomorrow morning. And it comes out, and it's the first one that doesn't hit it out of the park. It won the weekend. And this comes in later with the Next Generation movies, but I mentioned that just because when Nemesis failed to open, basically, it had nothing to do with the fact that how good the movie was, because nobody knew at that point for sure how good or bad the movie was. No one had seen it yet. But Star Trek V, it won the opening weekend. It was number one by a long shot, but it died quickly because this is dumb. That's why George Lucas and Steven Spielberg went into hiding when their movies came, when Close Encounters and Star Wars came out. And George Lucas saying, they told, hey, you're number one in the weekend. No, I don't care about this weekend. Any movie can win the weekend. Tell me what happens next week. That's when we know we got something. And for Star Trek V, it's like, no. So that put a damper on things for a while. And that is that's when the odd number curse reared its ugly head. Nobody had talked about that before. About every odd number movie being dumb and stupid and only the even ones working. And which isn't quite true, because one was it dragged a bit because it wasn't really finished. Two, they corrected, and a big. Three, the only problem with that one is it was a little short. It was about 90 minutes. It was very quick and went by, And four, they got more to do. They do stuff. This also makes it very hard to merchandise these movies, because each one is kind of, and their marketing is kind of like, well, what happened in the last movie? Okay, we'll try that, but it overlapped and they never hit the peak right. But 5 is also the first rumblings about how much the cast hates Shatner. That was the first time you started people. That's when the knives came out. Before that, they were still pretending to be one big happy Star Trek family. Oh yeah, we all get along fine. But then I think Jimmy Doon was the first one. But it wasn't until 5 when everyone starts. We hate Shatner. We always have. He's always been a big blowhard thing. And I think Stephen Collins made a comment in Starlog about his experience on there. He said, they're not the big happy family they say they are. So they were grumblings. You look around, these guys aren't that these aren't that friendly to each other. So it's like, don't buy the hype. But this is when it became that's when they took the mask off. Yeah, we hate him. I think there, between that and also, I think a large part was an element that Shatner touched on in a one-on-one discussion he had with Nimoy years later, in the thing called Mind Meld. Very good. Where they're sitting in Nimoy's backyard just talking. And Shatner's, his theory is like, what made the difference is the conventions. Because the other guys, they're having to do the conventions all the damn time to make a living. And they're having fans. I love you, you're my favorite. Just fill in the blank of which one. It wouldn't matter if it's Grace Lee Whitney. Oh, you're my favorite. You should have been. Oh, Sulu, you should have been the captain. Oh, Chekhov, why didn't you know them? The only one that kept the level head about it was Walter Koenig. The rest of them, I think, I got to their heads about. Yeah, I should have had more. That bastard Shatner was stealing my lines all the damn time. The reality was nobody was really stealing them. They were cutting lines because we ain't got time for this fluff. We're trying to get a story done, and either we cut it now or they're going to cut it in editing. So, there is a lot of deleted stuff here. Or in the Corbijn maneuver, Sulu's talking about, it's going to be all already. They cut it. Shatner had nothing to do with that. He wasn't in the editing bay. That was when they were editing the thing and putting it together. But there was a lot of, where the main culprits were Bill Shatner, Leonard Nimoy, and Dee Kelly. Where they are essentially rewriting the script on the set. And we don't need that. And in fact, this is more of a Spock line than and they start shifting the lines around and holding things up and pissing everybody off. And Roddenberry finally had to do The Letter, where he just reams them all out for pulling weight they weren't supposed to have. Look, I'm the executive producer here. We're losing Gene Kuhn, and partially because of you pulling this shit. Knock it the hell off. It's like, so that, that sort of thing. So there had been stuff brewing in the background for a long time. But this is when, now they felt, safe to come out and start bashing on Shatner. And, to be fair to Shatner, he wasn't doing it to be mean. He never. He was thinking of the work. He's like, what can we do to make this better? What can we do to get this? Make it, keep it moving, keep it. And it kind of forgot about, you're cutting somebody's line here, Bill. Okay. Nichelle would pipe up once, hey, goddamn it, Bill, that's my line. This is my chance to say something. So, but a lot of them, it's like they were, they didn't do anything. In fact, during this period, during one of the earlier the Trek cruises, before they got all official, and it was just some company doing Star Trek conventions at sea. And there was a panel discussion going on, and Majel Barrett's up there and a few others, and Walter Koenig, who was really there to recover from a heart attack. He's just don't push me. And he's up there, and they're starting in on the Bash Shatner time. And Majel's having a ball. Talking about Shatner, didn't he's up there, and turns to Walter Koenig. And said, well, Walter, you were there. What do you think? And he just started, look, even if everything you say is true, we didn't say anything about it then, so we're really not in a position to say anything about it now. And just sat back. The crowd goes nuts, because I think a lot of them are saying, you're being kind of, and so, yeah! And then Majel will kind of sit there with her jaw on her lap, and it's like, because again, well, yeah, this is something that Shatner and Koenig had out on Shatner's raw nerve. When it came to the show. And so, yeah, there were some things that irritated the hell out of me. And yeah, and a few times I should have said, Shatner, knock it off. Okay, whack him, because a lot of it was, no, Shatner was not being mean, he was being a little thoughtless. He's thinking, this doesn't need to be in there, and then kind of forget, there's other people involved here, Bill, it's not all you. Okay. But Star Trek 5, and also, again, at the time of Star Trek 5, Next Generation has now been running for a few years. And Roddenberry is now in a position to say something. He's not just the executive consultant. He's now the executive producer of Star Trek Next Generation. And the grand poobah of all that is Star Trek, at least in the eyes of the audience. So that one, particularly with the storyline of Sybok and Sarek having been married to a Vulcan princess, that got Roddenberry to say that one's apocryphal. That was the first official thing that, no, that's not fully canon. It's like, now I reconcile it as saying, that what we witnessed was a drunken ghost story told around the campfire. Because notice, a lot of it's like, you got the teaser thing on the Sybok on the thing, but most of it doesn't really start kicking off until after the scene in Yosemite, where Spock is, trying to experience all the rituals accompanied with tamping out. Well, what do we not see about it? Telling a ghost story around the campfire. And they introduce the bottle of Jack Daniels that Dr. McCoy's brought along for the beans. And how the story gets progressively weirder and weirder, much like some of Roddenberry's scripts. The further down you get in the bottle, the stranger it gets. And so we get, if you just imagine a drunken commentary running along the rest of the movie. And you say, yeah, sorry, it's Sybok was Spock's brother. I do not have a brother. Shut up, Spock. And it's from the Sarek was he had a wife. He's a Vulcan princess before then. It's like, Vulcan has no royalty. Shut up, Spock. It's, you picture that, and it all kind of falls into place then. Yeah, the movie happened, but not necessarily as I think. Okay, because when the MS-23K fan film was done with the guys reviewing Star Trek 5, and when they're back at Yosemite, it's like, what? Did it's all a dream? It's all, acting like, did it ever happen? So take it out. It's like James Woods had a short-lived TV series named called Shark. We played a lawyer, and training these young lawyers. He had a line: "Truth is relative. Pick one that works." That's what you got to do sometimes with the kind of thing of what how to reconcile certain things. In this one, the best solution is it was a dream. Okay, it was a ghost story. They were drunk. Go with it. Just don't ask me questions. Just move on. And thankfully, it is pretty much one and done, self-contained. There will be no more of that. No one will speak of this. Now, what this did to the franchise at this point, not good. It's like, do we even, have we run out of ideas here? Has the thing started to burn out, or is it just a bad movie? What saved it at that point, well, was the fact you had the 25th anniversary coming up in '91, or and they needed something out for that big anniversary, and you had Dennis Miller talking to me, on SNL. You want to know the list of movies coming out that year, and everything was a sequel. Friday the 13th, 5, Halloween 6, and finish up, and Star Trek 6, The Apology. It was not going unnoticed that, you left in a doggy, and it's time to, fix this. And so, turn back to the team that gave us Star Trek 4, in most part. Okay, Nimoy wasn't going to direct this time, but he was put in the executive producer slot. And brought back Nick Meyer. Nick Meyer had a hand in 4. He didn't direct it, but he helped write it. But this time he's going to direct it. And this time because he wanted to use The Undiscovered Country as the title for Star Trek 2. There's also a big Shakespeare thing. And it's from the Hamlet, the speech. The big one. And he finally got to use it and actually work it into the storyline, so it made a little more sense. It would not have made much sense in Star Trek 2. And again, this is where now they're directly locking horns with Roddenberry. Because again, Next Generation has been up for a while now. And that's where you got, Michael Dorn showing up as Worf's grandfather, Colonel Worf, as, the defense attorney in the Klingon trial. But also at this point, Roddenberry's health is really starting to fade a bit. He's still a feisty old bear. And they did not get along. But he's still at points. So it's like one thing that even bugged me a bit when Kirk gives the command, right standard rudder. And the same thing. Starships don't have rudders. What the hell are you doing? It's like, one thing that Roddenberry did get his way on was originally the Trader crew member was going to be Saavik. And however Roddenberry felt about Saavik back when Star Trek 2 was going, I was like, no, she's a beloved character now. I was like, make it somebody else. And that's where we got Valeris instead. But it wasn't, Roddenberry didn't think very well of, the way as bigoted as Kirk was. No, that's not the character we wrote. And Shatner had similar ideas, because originally the thing of let them die. It's like, originally it was shot. What am I doing? No, you understand. No, that wasn't. No, forget what I just said. But they cut it and let it stand. And Shatner felt a little betrayed at that one, because it did make Kirk look like a raving bigot. I mean, and again, then the final cut, it's understandable, because what was the last big experience Kirk had with the Klingons? They killed his son. They was just starting to get to know, and these things can turn, it's like he never really liked the Klingons, but it could turn into like, I hate them now. So it makes sense, but it's like, no, it's like, no. But Meyer would do that sort of thing. He had with Shatner, because Shatner liked to act, and Meyer would do, because when he in Star Trek 2, when he's trying to when Khan is demanding all files and the material regarding Genesis, and the line is "Here it comes," Shatner would kept playing up, "Here it comes." It's like, no, he just say it. So after he said, "Here it comes," and that was like after 15, 20 takes, just to wear him down to get him to stop acting and just say the line. Less Olivier, a little more James Dean. That thing. Forced him to be a little more method. A little just be in the moment. Don't try and play it up. And so, but Roddenberry's like, he was, I think he was probably half blind at that one. So he meant, when they finally screened it for him, he may not have really seen it very well. I don't know how how much was happening when they were arguing about it. But he'd go in a series of strokes. So yeah, by the time they finally ran, he did see the final cut. And it was at a party, and they were sitting around the pool, and he was in his wheelchair. And someone, oh, what do you think of the last movie? He said, you know. So he got his way on some things, other things that didn't. And actually, the reaction after the movie came out, it's like, from the producers, that, actually Roddenberry was right on a few points. But 6 wrapped up. And the whole thing with them signing, their signatures, that was them signing off. That's it. We're done. We're signing off on it. Thanks for the ride. It's been fun. And then it's like it's handed off to the next generation. And that's where we take it from there. So on that point, we will talk at you later.